Good evening and welcome to Face to Face, the show where we talk with local radio and television broadcasters here in South Dakota. Today on my show, I'm talking with Erik Thorstenson of KSFY Sports, the sports director down there.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here today, Thor.
Good to be here.
So can you just give our audience a quick biography of yourself?
Grew up in Sioux City, Iowa, just down the road, that rival city that everyone loves here so much, loves to go visit. And I went to University of South Dakota, always wanted to go into broadcasting, majored in mass communication. My first job out of college, I worked down at NBC affiliate in Sioux City, Channel 4, worked there about 3 years, and then been here about 5 years. Started here as the weekend sports guy, and then about 2 years into that, Jeff Harkness, our sports director, left, and I moved up to the sports director position about 3 years now. So
wow. So
about 8 years total.
When did you know that you wanted to go into broadcasting as a young, did you know it as a kid? Or?
Yeah, I always was interested in it. I remember growing up watching, I was always kind of interested in watching the news and especially the sports. I always loved sports. You know, growing up playing a lot of sports, and I know you're going to bring it up in my biography. I said that I made sports casting tapes of myself at 10 years old. We must have been pretty bored as young kids, but we did that a lot. You know, we had a little tape recorder.
Was there any type of sports that you like? Did you do football, basketball, baseball, or did you
pretty much a little bit of everything? Yeah. And it just always interests me, and I kind of knew going into college that I wanted to major in mass communication.
Did you have any education before college in broadcasting in high school?
No, I mean, this is amazing, this facility you have here. I mean, the opportunity you guys have to do this. We didn't have anything like this. I mean, technically, when I first went to college, our facilities were probably not as good as this right now. I mean, it's improved a lot, and I know at USD it's a lot better now. They have a great facility down there, but I mean, you guys really have a great opportunity here to, I mean, even doing something like this, I mean, we never had anything like that in high school.
Who did you look up to? Who were your role models growing up?
Growing up, there were a couple of local sportscasters in Sioux City that I remember watching. Steve Taylor, I think he moved out, he's like in Atlanta now. He's a guy that just kind of grew up watching do sports. He had such a unique way about it. He was very funny and lively. Nationally, you know, you watch Bob Costas and some of those big guys, Al Michaels, you know, and just how smooth those guys are at all times and how versatile those guys are, that they can just do anything. You know, almost any type of sport, throw it to them and they can talk. You know, they're just so great at what they do. And I grew up watching those guys. Howard Cosell, that's well before your guys' time, but I certainly remember
Was he
him.
One of the big ones that you
Yeah, I mean, as a
watching?
kid growing up, he was the, you know, probably the biggest broadcaster sports-wise that there was, and he had a certain unique style to him, you know, that you don't even see anymore. You don't see guys like Howard Cosell anymore. That flair for the dramatic that he had, and he was so intelligent. Some of the things he said, you just, you know, where did he come up with that? But,
what kind of classes did you have to take in college for broadcasting? There probably wasn't anything like a class where you could it was just sports. You had to go into a general one.
Yeah, and there wasn't, like you said, there's no, you know, I think that may have changed. They may have something like that now for those just interested in going into sports. But you take your general courses. You know, you'll have broadcast announcing, video editing, things like that, where you're learning the basics. You're going out with a camera, you're shooting, you're editing. That's the thing that sometimes maybe people forget is when you want to go into broadcasting, maybe some kids might think it's just being in front of the camera and, you know, talking about the news, but they don't see the other side of it where you're out with a camera, you're shooting everything, you're coming back, you're editing it, you know, you're laying your voice down. And I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into that 2-minute piece that you put on the air, that minute 30 piece that you put on the air. And you know, you take all those courses to learn the basic skills, things like that. Voice, there was a voice class that we had down at USD.
Really, a voice? What do you?
Well, it wasn't. What was it called? I mean, I think that was called broadcast announcing, where they work on, you know, you actually would read with the teleprompter, do radio things, just try to learn about inflection and where to, you know.
Is there anything from like one major lesson in college that you still use today? It's always in the back of your mind.
Back in college, in my actually I was there 4 years. not quite 8 years, 4 or 5 years. just get involved. That's kind of the main thing. I look back at the opportunities that we had, and you know, we did a newscast every week. Just get involved. I mean, if you're really interested in broadcasting, you can do as much as you want to, and if you're interested in going into that field, you know, to get involved in all the activities, get involved in the college newscast. You know, have ideas. You know, now that we're actually working in television, every day it's about ideas, coming in with new ideas and things like that. You know, when you're in college, because you've got those opportunities there. I know you're busy in college, you got a lot of other things going on, but I think I should have even gotten involved more now that I look back.
After college, you graduated and you went to WNAX in
Yeah,
Sioux City?
I did work. That's in Yankton. I worked there.
Oh, Yankton.
Yeah.
How was, that's a radio station, right?
Yeah.
What-
AM radio station, you know.
What exactly did you do down there?
Well, I work like the 6 to midnight shift every once in a while. You'd play country music, and I kind of developed a liking for some country music after, you know, playing it over and over again for 6 hours. And, you know, it was mainly news, weather. Every hour you did, you know, read news, did weather, did 5-state weather and things like that. That was a great experience because you're on air for 6 hours straight. You know, you're talking constantly for 6 hours. And I think radio isn't, if you want to go into television, you should at some point have worked in radio.
Really?
It just seems like that experience that you get of, you know, like I say, being on for 6 hours, it also helps your enunciation. I mean, you're reading newscasts, weathercasts, sportscasts over and over again each hour. I think it's, you know, great experience for you. And you're on live, and it's live. It's constantly live, you know. So.
What made you want to go from radio to television?
Just was always interested more in the television side. The visual aspect of it, you know, I love, you know, editing video. I was always interested in that, putting together video pieces, and I just always, TV just interested me. You know, radio is certainly fun too, and there's a lot of great opportunities in that, and but you're on all the time, you know, all day long. I like the aspect TV, you know, I'm on just a few minutes a night.
What made you really want to go into the sports part of you know, television news? You pretty much we have 3 parts. You have general news, you have weather, and then you have sports. So what did you like more about sports?
See, when I was in Sioux City, I was news and sports. I kind of was, you know, turned out to be more news than sports, probably about 70-30. And I didn't mind news, but there's just a lot of negativity in it that I didn't care for. And certainly, you know, a lot of people that are in news, they love the, you know, I didn't mind spot news. There was some excitement in that. But something about sports, it's always positive, it's fun, you're going to games, things like that. I always kind of like that side of it. I had more difficulty from the news standpoint, you know, sitting in a courtroom all day. I just, you know, or having to interview a family after you know, they lost everything in a house fire. I really had difficulty with that. You know, I did it, but that was a part of the job news. I just didn't like the negativity of it. But you know, but that's an important part of the show, and you know, a lot of people, obviously our news reporters, they love their jobs, and news is always off the top. Sports is kind of buried at the end. They think, you know, importance-wise, that's why we're at the end of the show. But I love sports. I've always just I like talking to coaches and players, and they want to talk to you, you know. At least news, there are many times when you know, they don't want to talk to you. They see the camera there, you know, we don't want to talk about that. Sports is the other way around. Usually they want to talk to you.
You talked about being in Sioux City for a while. How long were you down there?
I was there 3 years.
And then you moved up to South Dakota. And talking to a few other reporters, I've realized that you see a pattern of migration. You see them starting in Sioux City or somewhere in Iowa and then moving up here to Sioux Falls. You yourself did that, and I'm sure some of your colleagues have also done that. Do you know exactly why that happens?
No, I don't really know. I know there has been a pattern of that. We have a number of people that worked in Sioux City that moved up here. Sioux Falls is a little bit bigger market. Not a lot. They're comparable. When we talk market sizes, I mean, Sioux Falls, when I came up here, it was like 102, 103. I think it might be a little bit smaller now, where Sioux City is market size about 140. By market size, we mean New York is #1, and Missoula, Montana, I believe, is like 240. And Sioux City, Sioux Falls are comparable, you know, small markets, television stations. it was a natural transition for me. Having gone to USD, you know, it just seemed to be a natural transition. I wanted to do full-time sports. That didn't happen when I was down in Sioux City. I was kind of hoping that a position would come open in our station. It never did in the time I was there. This was just an opportunity. I sent a tape up. I also, I applied elsewhere, Fargo. I mean, who knows? In this business, you never know where you're going to go. And it just so happened that this opened up here. And I know a number of other people that work in this market worked in Sioux City before. Maybe just a little bit bigger market to move to, and a little more capabilities as far as having satellite truck live capabilities we didn't have in Sioux City.
Really?
I guess they have a microwave truck now, but I mean, we have satellite trucks here where we can actually go out. We have a full photographer staff, photojournalists, which makes life so much easier, and you know, they do a great job. And I mean, you can just tell the difference in video quality from Sioux City to here. Down there, we're one-man band. I mean, you shot everything, you edited everything, you wrote everything.
Wow.
It still happens here sometimes. But.
So you must, people think it's fairly easy being the sports guy, is it?
It's not easy, no.
What's...
It really isn't. Some people might say it looks kind of, TV can look kind of glamorous, you know, when you're on the air, but there's a lot that goes into putting those three and a half minutes together. I mean, you're going out, you're gathering stuff. Some days are slow. You're trying to come, okay, what are we going to talk about today? And there isn't much going on. Let's say on a Monday or a Tuesday, you know, after the weekend. Weekends are very busy. I mean, they don't see. I mean, just from being the weekend anchor, you know, you're out shooting college football games, taking scores at the last minute, plugging all that in. Sports is kind of it can be a grind. It's fun. But I mean, you're constantly busy. On a Saturday night, you could be shooting 3 things. You're going to a Skyforce game, you're buzzing over to Augustana to shoot that game, and then you might be hitting a high school game, coming back, editing all that, taking scores, and it's fun, but it's hectic. It's not easy.
I have to ask this.
Okay.
What is your most embarrassing moment as, you know, on camera or back when you were in radio?
Never had one.
Never had one?
Oh, I've had a few embarrassing. Let me see. When I worked at WNEX, it was the polka show.
Oh.
And we had a call-in where it was a giveaway for an album, and I remember leaving my mic on. You know, no, color 6, color 7, color 8. My boss called, "Your mic's on," something. You know, you could hear the whole the whole transition. That was kind of embarrassing, but I don't know if anyone was listening. You know, on TV, I've had, you know, numerous embarrassing moments. You know, when your microphone's off, for instance, you get out there and you realize your mic's off, and then you got to open the thing. And there's kind of that nervous energy there, and you're trying to clip it onto your tie. I mean, that's happened a bunch of times. I've forgot to put my mic on.
What do you do when you catch yourself making a mistake and you're on the air?
You just have to keep going. I mean, that's the thing. It's like sometimes you can be upset about something, or let's say you had a tape that wasn't queued up right, and you just have to go on. It's upsetting. You can't let people know that you're disappointed about that. You have to go on and finish the show, and you know, you can't let it bother you, because you're going to have embarrassing moments. When you're anything live, you're going to have those things.
What's the most interesting story you've ever done?
Interesting story.
I mean, this past, you know, as a filming date, January 2001, a few days ago, you got to go up and talk in Aberdeen with Josh Heupel, and
it's always fun when you're doing those stories that the whole, that it kind of has you don't have a nationwide audience, but there's national attention to it. For instance, the NBA draft back in last summer, going up to that was interesting. You know, with Mike Miller, the number 5 pick, just being at the draft and talking to his family afterwards, being set up there at the Target Center with all the nationwide media. Or it's certainly fun to go up, go up to the Vikings NFC Championship game a few years ago. Being out there in the field, going to the locker room afterwards. Although those guys aren't real friendly. I mean, it's not like interviewing the local coaches here. You get to the big market, the Randy Mosses and the Denny Greens. They don't really want to. The media is almost kind of looked at as, I think, the enemy many times with those guys at that level.
Why do you think that?
They get bashed so much, it seems like.
Really?
It seems like, you read a lot of newspaper articles, like, for instance, in the Twin Cities. I mean, pretty hard on the Vikings, and then these guys are out interviewing. They're doing their job, and it's interesting reading, and they're certainly doing their job, and I enjoy reading it too. But it's almost like among pro athletes, the media kind of is looked at as the enemy a lot of times, that we blow things out of proportion, and they're very hesitant many times to talk to the media. You know, they'll set an agenda on what questions they want asked. I mean, Alex Rodriguez signs that huge contract, and it's every interview he did after that, he was kind of on the defense, basically everyone seemed to be asking him, is this what's wrong with baseball, that you're signing for $250 million? He was almost, instead of being a positive thing, which I don't know if it is anyway, for baseball in general, it turns into kind of a negative thing, and they kind of get on the defense, you know. But that's fun covering the big time stuff.
I would assume it's kind of easier for sports, sports reporters and everything to get interviews with famous people, famous sports stars at least, than news trying to cover like presidential candidates and so forth. Who have you interviewed that's been fairly big?
Let me see. When I was actually in news down in Sioux City, I interviewed Dan Quayle. I probably actually interviewed
really,
some more famous figures. It seems like Dan Quayle. That's a big name.
What was that?
But when he was there, was campaigning.
What was that like?
Ted Koppel, interviewed him down there when he came through.
Was
Margaret Thatcher? We stood just a few feet from her. We couldn't ask her any questions. That was in Storm Lake, but we couldn't ask her any questions. It was just a photo session. We just basically stood there with our cameras while she posed with some students from Buena Vista. Sports-wise, any of the big names that have come through here, Walter Payton was obviously a big name. Marcus Allen. Let me see, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, all the big athletes obviously that have come through Sioux Falls, Twins players, Kirby Puckett, I've never interviewed Josh Heupel. We've just gotten stuff fed to us from him, but any big name that's come through Sioux Falls, yeah, we've interviewed him, and I don't know if it's easier in sports than it is in news. Politicians certainly want to talk to the media because they want their face out there, and they want, during elections.
What's your favorite type of sports to cover? You've got a lot. You've got here in Sioux Falls, you have at this moment you have hockey with the Stampede. Yeah. You have regular football with the Vikings. You've got the Sky Force, Canaries in the summer. And then of course you have the high school level as well. What's your favorite type?
I really like them all. There are some obviously like better. I like the big ones: basketball, football, hockey. Some of the ones that when I came up here, racing is big up here, and I really have to confess I didn't know a lot about racing. It's fun to go out to Houston now and watch that and cover that. I admit I didn't know anything about racing when I first came up here. It's fun to be out there. I like them all. There's, I suppose, maybe cross country is not always the most exciting to be out at, or nothing against those in cross country, but I like them all. Everything's a little different. I like the big ones, though, I suppose, the major ones.
I noticed when I've seen you do sports off camera that sometimes you have a script, like when you're about to do highlights from a game, so like a football game. Some of it is scripted, some of it is not. So you're pretty much improvising your own lines as it goes. How do you do that? How do you I can sometimes barely even see the numbers. How do you know who's who and what's going on?
Sometimes it can get kind of tough. Let's say on a Friday football night, scripts are coming in late. Everyone's editing games up to the last minute, throwing you a script, basically writing a name down. So-and-so, 40-yard run, fourth quarter, 7-0. You just kind of have to fill the gaps. You try to fill the gaps, and sometimes you hope. Sometimes it probably doesn't sound so good. Sometimes it does, and the main thing is you try to pronounce the names right. That can be tough to do at times. I'm sure we've butchered many names that we didn't mean to. But I mean, after doing it so much, especially sports, it is a lot of ad lib. You'll have when the highlights are shown, you watch what they have there, and you just try to maybe add a little something on the side, because it's not obviously all going to be written down. A lot of those shot sheets, they're scribbled up. You scribble them up in a few minutes, and it is a lot of ad-lib in sports.
The sports legend, broadcaster I should say, still a legend, Bob Costas wrote a book about how baseball pretty much needs a big fix. He said that there's too much money in it, and the fact that the biggest teams, the Yankees and all forth, have the most money, so they're always going to be in the World Series, whereas the smaller markets, the Minnesota Twins, for example, will probably never ever see the World Series ever again. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I do. I think something needs to be done in baseball. I think they have to implement a salary cap of some sort, because I mean, look at how the NFL does it. There's parity every year. It seems like you have a different team moving forward. Baseball, it's not fair that one team can have a payroll of $150 million while another team has, when Alex Rodriguez makes more than twice as much now as the entire Twins team. That just doesn't seem right. But these smaller markets just can't afford that. Something needs to be done. I think a salary cap would maybe help out. I know that the players are probably going to strike again if they try to implement something like that. But yeah, I totally agree with that. Something needs to be done with baseball. Every year it's the same teams, and you don't want to see the Yankees in the World Series every year. The Braves are there every year, it seems like. Somehow it needs to be evened out so it's on an equal playing field, because you're right, the Twins certainly aren't going to be back there anytime soon.
I'm going to ask you I'm going to say a sports team, local ones pretty much, and I just want you to give your basic opinion, what they've done well, how you feel about them, and just your general opinion. The first one I'd really like to know is the Minnesota Vikings. How do you, what do you feel about them? Are they?
Well, I'm a little biased because I grew up a Vikes fan. I was always a huge Vikings fan growing up. I think that they want a new stadium. I worry about Red McCombs eventually saying, if we don't get that stadium, we're moving this team. I don't know if the NFL would ever allow that, but you worry about that happening. They certainly get a lot of support in this area. They've been successful. Everyone kind of rips on Denny Green, but every year they're in the playoffs. They haven't won the Super Bowl, which would be nice, and they should have won it a couple of years ago. But they've got a loyal following. They sell out every game. They're in the postseason every year, and I hope they never leave town.
The Sioux Falls Skyforce.
Skyforce have been, especially in the last 5 years, when Mo McCone first came here, have been very successful. They still draw a lot of fans. I worry about the CBA as a league with 7, 8 teams in the league. The NBA is starting a new developmental league next year, and that's kind of what the CBA has been to the NBA, has been that feeder system. Well, I wonder what will happen next year. You worry about just the league itself. The Skyforce have a stable franchise, but it's the rest of the league. And if the rest of the league fades, then where does that leave Sioux Falls? They'll have to find somewhere else.
The Canaries.
Canaries, especially after this new stadium, or the improved stadium last year, it drew obviously a lot more fans. It was a beautiful ballpark to go to, much nicer than was there before. They just haven't won. they haven't really had a consistent winning team.
Stampede.
Stampede had phenomenal success in just 2 seasons. I mean, their record, 22-3-1 this year, and they had a great year last year in the expansion franchise and marketed the team very well. Great promotional campaigns, and I mean, they're drawing great, selling out record crowds. People love live hockey. I think a lot of people hadn't seen a lot of hockey, and they went and they got hooked.
Well, we have a few minutes left. I guess these are just general, what-if questions. If you weren't in broadcasting, what would you be in?
I was always kind of interested in going into it, working for a team, public relations. I love baseball and Minnesota Twins. Actually working for a sports organization. I always wanted to be around it. I used to think about being a coach. I was kind of interested in that, and teaching and coaching, but I think I'd lean more toward working within an organization, owning a team, not owning a team.
What's one thing you want to do before you retire?
Before I retire.
Do you want to keep moving up? Do you want to, do you go to the next level of network or maybe even ESPN?
It's so competitive, to go to ESPN or move up to a big market. It's difficult. I mean, it's very competitive. You kind of, when you get to a stage in your life, when you got married a year ago, or a little over a year ago, bought a house, you almost get a little settled in. You like Sioux Falls is such a great community. You can see that temptation to, sort of settle in and stay here for a long time. Then a part of you still has those dreams of trying to go to the bigger city, sending those tapes out. But it's very competitive. Sports especially is extremely competitive. Our news director often tells the story that for a news job, they'll have a stack of a few tapes, and weather as well. But for sports, get a stack of a couple hundred tapes.
Wow.
It just seems to be kind of a real competitive area to go into. And I still have those dreams of moving on, or at least giving it a shot to move on to a bigger city.
What, where do you see local sports headed? High school and, it's like the Skyforce and the Stampede.
It seems like everything is heading toward the internet.
Really?
I mean, everything is so internet-oriented now that one day you'll be able to probably watch even all your local teams just by going on the internet. If you want to see scores, updated things at the minute, go on the internet. It's all right there. I think that one thing you don't see anymore that we used to have is we'd go through all the boards of every local score. Now we just squeeze it at the bottom of the screen. And maybe it's not as personal, and some people don't like that because they say, well, we can't watch the highlights and read the scores. But that's kind of the way television is becoming. We're making the screen a little busier and putting a lot more information on there. You just have to decipher a lot more.
Well, Thor, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you.
And I guess my final question, quick yes or no, do you love your job?
I do. I love my job. I love the fact I can sleep in every day. No, it's kind of nice that I don't have to be until about 1:32. I've never been a morning person. Yeah, I do. It's always something different, it seems like. Every day there's something different to talk about, different to cover. I love going out to games and just being around sports. Some days are tough. Some days, like any job, you don't love it every day, but I do. I enjoy my job.
Well, Thor, thank you so much for being with us
thank
today.
You.
And I thank you for watching Face to Face today. I'm Avi Forstein, and I hope you tune into the next edition of Face to Face. I'm Avi Forstein. Good night.